Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up and get ready for a ride through Hollywood history, entertainment mastery, and an incredible love story wrapped into one. Today, we are beyond thrilled to celebrate not one, but two titans whose combined influences stretches across decades of iconic showbiz moments, groundbreaking projects, and public service. First, let's start with Rick Marcelli, a man whose entertainment journey began quite literally in the golden backyard of Hollywood, playing ball with Cecil B. DeMelle's grandson. While most kids were dreaming about meeting stars, Rick was living it, wielding DeMille's very own Academy Award like a trophy for the future that awaited him. By age 15, Rick was managing his first rock band. Yes, at 15. And by 21, he had already masterminded a billboard-breaking joint venture between ABC Records and 7-Eleven stores. If you ever jammed to a hit single, you might just have Rick to thank for making sure that it hit the shelves. For managing Grammy Award-winning artists and bringing comic legends like George Lopez, Jenny Jones to the spotlight, Rick's resume reads like a who's who of entertainment royalty. He didn't just manage stars, he shaped them, guided them, and gave them the tools to become legends. With the Marcelli Company, he continues to polish diamonds, turning bright talents into household names. Whether it's producing hit TV shows for Fox and BBC, or directing major Hollywood campaigns, Rick's fingerprints are all over the entertainment industry. Now, if you thought one Marcelli was impressive, hold on to your hats, because we're only halfway there. Enter Robin Bragg-Marcelli, a powerhouse in her own right. Robin brings over 45 years of experience from UCLA, where she held executive roles in management, budgeting, and emergency services. Her experience expands from budgeting entire UCL operations to becoming a certified emergency medical technician, coordinating disaster response efforts, and even volunteering with the LAPD, FBI, and Los Angeles Fire Department. Robin's list of certifications from emergency management to Homeland Security proves she's always one step ahead when it comes to protecting and serving her community. A licensed ham radio operator and a graduate of the LAPD Citizens Academy, Robin is not just a manager, she's a guardian. With a resume that includes Frank Zappa, the Beach Boys, Linda Ronstadt, Lou Rawls, Bobby Darin, and Dwayne Scott, along with various musicians and actors in the entertainment industry spanning decades. But together they're a force like no other. Rick and Robin not only share a passion for success, but they've also co-authored Hide Your Love Away, an intimate story of Brian Epstein. Their work effortlessly blends creativity with advocacy, shining a light on the themes of truth, courage, and a higher calling. From Hollywood's bright lights to the crucial work of protecting critical infrastructures, from the glitz and glam of the red carpets to life-saving volunteer efforts with the LAPD and FBI, Rick and Robin Marcelli define what it means to be legendary, both on and off the stage. They consult, they guide, they direct careers to dizzying heights, and they do it all with heart, humor, and above all, love. So please join me in welcoming the indomitable, unstoppable, and absolutely unforgettable Rick and Robin Bragg-Marcelli.
Wow.
Hello there.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, what an introduction. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you.
It's an
You did
amazing
your
honor.
research.
Yes.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And Rick, I want to start by touching on something. It was said that when you were a child, your parents made you go to dance classes. You had to put down your action figures and pick up a pair of dancing shoes. How did that experience shape your approach to managing artists and understanding their needs, especially when it comes to performing?
Starting off as a Megalyn kitty, tap dancing and I took every kind of class you could imagine, 5 days a week, including Saturdays, and actually 6 days a week. But I think what's happened to me when I got involved with personal management, I understood what it was like to be on stage in front of a camera as well as behind it. So I knew what the entertainer was going through emotionally. I knew the anxieties they were having, the fear almost, and the love that they were mixed inside their own heart and soul. So it made it easier for me to talk to artists. A lot of the managers I know didn't have my background. They approached it from more of a business side, and they're great at it. But I approached it from an artistic side, and I think that's why I could talk to the kind of people that I represented, because I understood them and understood where they were at and where they were going.
And Robin, you're also an accomplished dancer from, if I remember correctly, Falcon Dance as well. What was your interest at
Right.
such a young age to be into dance?
Well, when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, my mother was a concert pianist. My father, both of them worked for the airlines, but my father also played the piano and were very much involved in music and entertainment. So they got myself and my younger sister into ballet. That's where it started. And as I got older, I never stopped that love of dance. So I started with the classic and all the techniques of ballet and went on to tap. That's one thing Rick and I have in common is tap and other types of dance as well. I've always loved dance. And at one point, that's what I wanted to do, be a professional dancer.
Now, do you still have your
Life
tap
took me other
shoes?
directions.
I
Pardon?
Do you still have your tap dancing shoes?
Oh, we
Still
both have
do,
our tap
yes.
dancing shoes. Yeah, we both have them. You know, it's funny. I used to see Robin dance all the time at the local clubs, you know, on Sunset Strip in Hollywood, West Hollywood,
Yes.
Gazzarri's and what have you. And there she was, rocking and
Well,
rolling.
disco dancing and
Yeah. No, I met Robin
nope.
when she was about 14,
Oh, yeah,
14
14
years
years
old.
old.
And I was about 18 or 19. I had an act that I managed on Capitol Records called The Game. And the drummer was on this street in West Hollywood on Martell, right? And
Mhm.
so she was there as a neighbor with a neighbor's friend and all. And we all got to know each other very early on, and we kept a relationship going for a couple of more days. No, for years.
Yeah, for quite a long time.
Yes.
So yeah, I was quite young and I was far too young to be going into dance clubs, but my father, God bless him, would take me anywhere I wanted to go. He'd be right there with me. And so, he allowed me to just enjoy myself and it was really wonderful. And so many times, Rick and my father and I would all run into each other.
It's amazing how you say that your father would take you wherever, and you probably shouldn't have been in those bars dancing. And now you look at where we are here in 2024, and there's no way that anyone's going to be letting someone walk through the door in those scenarios.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, yes. Well, different times. And it is amazing how, the changes. But I have to say, I feel that for both Rick and myself, that the times that we grew up as teenagers, one thing is being a child, but when you become a teenager and then young adult, those were the best times. We really have a lot to be thankful for people we met, places we went, things we could do. And it was really a lot of fun.
Now, as we're staying in the past a little bit here, Rick, you managed your first rock band at 15. While most teens are still figuring out their hobbies, you were managing a rock band. How did that happen?
Well, it happened when I discovered I really wasn't a musician. Uh, After being a child actor and doing that whole run, the Beatles came to the world, and everyone wanted to be a rock star. Of course, I had a guitar and a bass guitar and had a band. And I remember I was playing at a club called the Wild Thing on Cahuenga Boulevard in Hollywood, and we were performing. The Knack was performing, and 13th Elevator, which became the Guess Who. We were all performing in this club. And after my set, I realized I'm not a musician. And I went out and sat on the street on a curb and just was sulking. And a guy walks up behind me and said, "Hey, do you have a car?" I said, "Yeah, I do." And because I drove young, at 15, with a temporary license and what have you. And his name was Abe Hawk, and he and I decided we should manage the group, the Knack that we just saw that was inside. And that started the ball rolling. That's when I met all the people at Capitol Records and met legendary producer Nick Venet, who was responsible for discovering the Beach Boys, and of course, Linda Ronstadt and the Stone Ponies, Fred Neil, Bobby Darin, Lou Rawls, all of that. And he was quite an amazing guy that I really looked up to then and still hold dearly in my heart.
How did your parents react to your early foray in the music business?
They supported it. I mean, I used to take the whole band, and we would rehearse in our living room. So they were very supportive of anything that had to do with show business. When I didn't want to be an actor anymore, I really fought that. They wanted me to stay in it, and just didn't want to do it. And that was the only probably argument that we that had about that. but I kept changing, changing with the times and going with it. So the record industry became an important thing for me, and I started going down that road. In fact, probably the most enjoyable time of my life was those years. Later on, when I managed other various people, I can't say it was as enjoyable as the years that I was hanging out at Capitol Records, working for Roger Miller, the Country Star, or what have you. Those were really fun times.
And Robin, what initially drew you into the entertainment industry?
My father. My father was a professional magician and was at the Magic Castle, performed at the Magic Castle. Now, I was born in Virginia. My parents brought us out west, Virginia to Colorado to California. And all of that was because of my father's desire to be an actor. And he was an actor in a few things, but he had his professional magic skills as well that I remember way back when I was very young in Virginia. And so he was that was what brought me into wanting to do something within the entertainment world, which for me started with dancing. Again, my mother was a concert pianist, and so there was always music in the house. We were always listening to all the Broadway shows, and I heard all sorts of great music with both my parents playing the piano as well. So that was what started me in that direction. And then meeting Rick and seeing what he was involved in, that just kind of helped us have a little bond as well.
I would take her to various recording sessions. I had a dear friend named Rick Gerard. He was a successful record producer at RCA Records. He was producing Jefferson Airplane, Feliciano, young Michael McDonald, and Harry Nilsson. And I remember I'd go to Harry's sessions all the time, and I brought Robin with me to one of Harry's sessions. So early on, she was always in and out, always in the studio, wherever I was. She was always welcomed, and got to see a lot of these people and meet a lot of these people. And it was kind of,
yeah, it was really wonderful.
It was great fun.
And fast forward to our later part of life, just
Yes.
having all of that to talk about was, makes life interesting.
Yes.
I want to ask you a question about your father, and it's just a small question. Since your father was a magician, what's your favorite trick your father would perform?
Well, I'll tell you, for me, when I was young, and it's going to sound silly, but it was pulling a rabbit out of his hat. How simple and basic can you be? I was always asking, how do you do that? He did other tricks as well, but that's the one that sticks in my mind. And it sticks in my mind more than anything else because I found out how he did the trick. And boy, that really ruined it for me. It's come on.
It's a bigger hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, bigger hat.
So that's the one that sticks to my mind.
I want to fast forward now. Your new book, Hide Your Love Away, right? Hide Your Love Away, an intimate story of Brian Epstein told through Larry Stanton. What inspired you guys to write this book?
Well,
I'll start with
okay.
Rick and I have known Larry Stanton for many, many years. Rick knew him when he was very young, and he had a relationship with him because of management. And fast forward to conversations we had in later years, he would tell us these wonderful stories that happened during his relationship with Brian Epstein.
May I just jump in though? But it was just these little stories, never knowing really his intimate relationship with Brian. That
Correct.
never came up. I had known Larry since I was 12 years old, because he wanted to manage me as a singers, and we had took a couple of shots at getting record deals, but didn't happen. He was a good friend, and I trusted him dearly. He trusted me. And when he met Robin, something happened, which was really interesting. He not only told us a story about how he met Brian and how he knew Brian, but he started really opening up about his personal life. And he only did that. Well, Brian, did you?
Well, he did that because my father, and this took me as a surprise when I was young, but bisexual, obviously, because he had 4 children. I being the oldest. But the gay life is what he was all about. And it's wonderful that my parents had a wonderful relationship. It was a little rough there for a while, but they had a wonderful relationship. So I would have conversations with Larry about that. And him knowing that and my sharing some experiences with him made him feel more comfortable coming out and telling us some of the intimate details of his relationship with Brian. Initially, with all the stories he was telling us, we said to both Rick and I said to Larry, "You've got to write a book. I mean, these stories are incredible." And he goes, "Nah, I don't want to do it. Why don't you?" We said, "All right, we will."
And the interesting, when we thought about writing the book, we thought it was just going to be a little story, just, something we put in what we were thinking about.
Like a Reader's Digest.
Like a Reader's Digest. I don't even know if that's even exists, but we were thinking about just a couple of paragraphs and that would do it. But when he started opening up about his sexuality and about what he went through and how he was basically tormented and couldn't be open about his relationship, nor could Brian, that started, we took pause and really had to hear what he was saying. And then I realized that for most of Larry's life, I would think all of his life, he had to hide really who he was. And I think Brian, in that way, did the same kind of hiding, because you could remember homosexuality didn't start to become legal until after Brian died in 1967. And it didn't become legal in the United States until what, 1970 or something, something
Much
crazy.
more acceptable then, and then it moved towards.
So when
what we
you
have
realize
today.
that all these people at that time really could not come forward, they couldn't hold hands, they couldn't exchange affection in any way without risking going to jail. So that was most interesting, and we thought we should write about that because in today's younger generation, younger gay people, I'm not so sure if the new generation really understands how much the older generation suffered through all that. And it's a good thing for them to realize the struggles that people had to go through to finally get to the point where you can have gay marriages and be open and all that stuff.
Well, my father unfortunately passed away at a younger age than I would have liked. And he didn't quite make 70. But so all of what we see today, he would have just been, his mind would have been blown. He be so excited for it all. He had a partner that he was with for 35 years. So it was incredible. And myself and my siblings welcomed him as well. It was really wonderful. And those were the types of stories that we shared with Larry Stanton as well. But many people from those prior generations continued up into the day they passed away with those struggles.
Even Larry, when he passed away, did he pass away a couple of years? He was living with a guy that we thought was just a roommate. But after he died, we actually found out they had a relationship. And we were told this by his niece. And believe me, I was close to Larry. We were really buddies, and so was Robin. And for him not to tell us about that, only told us he still lived
with fear.
With fear. In fact, he made sure that we weren't going to be too scandalous in terms of the book, even though a lot of the stories he told us we didn't put in the book, because he wanted to protect Brian, and he also wanted to protect himself or his other roommates that he had, other people that he knew, because he was concerned that they might lash out knowing that he was gay.
Well, and with some of his family members as well.
Right.
So yes. we had to tone the stories down a bit.
So it's a unique point that you've touched on here, in the sense of that it's widely accepted, right? Everything is now completely different, but he still chose to not share these things with you and live in fear. Why do you believe that was the case when everything is now accepted? It's not what it was. Why did you believe that he still lived that way? No, I can't share this until after.
You walk up to a stove and touch the fire and your hand gets burnt. You don't go up to the stove anymore. And if I told you, well, that stove really is a video effect, you still would be apprehensive about reaching out if you really got burned. I would believe. I believe that he lived his young adult life. Most of his life was hidden And that's why he didn't want to come forward.
Well,
That's why he was so protective of Brian.
yes.
He didn't really want to say anything that would hurt him in any way.
It's the fear of rejection from,
Society.
many people, society,
Family.
losing your job. Many went to jail. Maybe they didn't stay long, but they went to jails nonetheless for those reasons. Limited places you could go and really be yourself for those reasons.
I mean, also with Brian Epstein, that people knew, his close circle knew he was gay, but it wasn't something he would publicly scream or yell or, broadcast. So he was cautious, and he certainly didn't want to have any of that kind of bad news, if you will, fall on the Beatles, because he loved them and wanted to protect them. So he was concerned, and he, as much as he had a personal secretary, and the personal secretary kept his daily and nightly activity logged
Work
in.
calendar.
He didn't tell her everything. He didn't tell her the intimate places, the places that he would really go out and hang out at other people. That was very quiet, and that's the life he shared with Larry.
Now, when you guys were writing this book, did you find it challenging to stay true to just one voice?
We did our research too.
Yes,
we tried to validate a lot of the stories. And we were pleasantly surprised, because it just gave us faith in hearing Larry's story and not having to worry as we progressed up into where we got towards the end of the book.
One of the things that happened was we became aware of an auction. This was way deep in writing the book, and we believe Larry, but you always question, is that story true? Was that exaggerated? Was this, we question, we just didn't take it so we tried to do, like Robin said, do our research. But one of the things that happened is this auction that happened in London was of Brian Epstein's personal private phone book. And in his phone book is Larry Stanton's name, his phone number, and his address.
Yeah, we got them to send us a page, with alphabetical with that section. Yes.
It really substantiated that they did know each other. And that was, and by the way, that phone number and address is written in Brian's handwriting. It's not typed in the phone book. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's just neat in the book that I'll say there was a decision not to dive into a little bit more of Brian Epstein's management of the Beatles, a topic that some would assume would play a critical role or a central role. Was there a particular reason for keeping the focus on his personal life instead of some of these additional stories that you guys came across?
Well, yes, because we wanted this story to be about Larry and Brian's relationship as much as possible. And there was a lot of interference in Brian and Larry's relationship that created some distance between them. We wanted to stay true to their story. Hard to hide Brian's professional life with regards to the Beatles and other acts that he managed as well, because that, part of the story was why he was in other parts of the world, but always coming back to California and Los Angeles as well, which is where their relationship, that's Larry and Brian's relationship, started in the first place.
Yeah, the Beatles really are the backdrop to the story. I can't really say it's a Beatles story, because they didn't really know about Brian's private activities. They knew some of it, but Brian wouldn't go. He wasn't there at any of the recording sessions. He was off doing other things, and other things were going to different clubs, hanging out with different people, and
and managing other acts as well.
Of course, yeah, of course, yes.
It's a neat dichotomy that you guys have here of the mid-60s London and LA that is focused throughout there, that has it throughout the book, with an underbelly of the entertainment business, especially when you bring up circles like the Velvet Mafia, I believe. For those who aren't familiar with that term, can you explain what is the Velvet Mafia? Why was that such a powerful thing to be feared?
Well, it wasn't organized, but it was a group of successful men that were gay. And because they all had that in common, they had a tight circle.
Well, in power, they had power.
That gay circle went from the parliament to personal managers, to producers, to what have you. And it was a very tight circle, and they were very powerful. Even to this day, that circle is kind of still powerful. When you talk about David Geffen and Elton John and various people like that. It's very powerful.
Hence the Velvet Mafia, a softer type of mafia organization. They're not out killing people, but they had a lot of power and could sure do some damage if they needed to.
They won't kill you, just your career.
That's correct.
Now, have you gotten any surprising feedback from readers that have made you reread your work in a different light?
Well,
one of the things is that we weren't sure when we were originally writing the book. We weren't sure if we were writing about the travels of a gay man. We were just telling this story. And what developed out of that is an awareness of homosexuality and the troubles that were going on in the 60s and 70s. That sort of, as we sort of peeled back the onion, it sort of exposed itself, and we realized that's what the book was really about. I don't believe we ever got any input from anybody that I can think of, but it would be welcomed.
Well, initially, I have to say that the book was published before it was really ready to be published the first time. It was a hardback, and we talked with our publisher about that, and hence the gold label published softback book, which includes the things we intended to be in the first publication that didn't make it. And with that, though, unfortunately, there was some interesting feedback. People thought, well, it wasn't as many pages, or they were talking about facts, but facts that they really weren't specific on. So it was hard for us to get anything out of what they said with regards to feedback. But the majority of people that have read the story recognized and gave us a favorable feedback.
Yeah, there's a book that's out right now, and forgive me, I should know the title. Written by Peter Brown, and it just came out. It's another song title. It's another Beatles song title of the book, and they mention about
which person?
The guy that we think that might have done some.
Oh, Diz Gillespie.
Diz Gillespie, excuse me.
The toxic lover we reference in the story. Diz Gillespie.
And from most of the readings that from various books, including this new book that came out, they don't understand where Diz Gillespie, and we're not speaking about the saxophone player. This is a guy that has a nickname. They didn't know where Diz Gillespie came from, and the truth is that Larry introduced Brian to Diz because Diz was Larry's roommate's high school friend, and was invited out from back east to come out to the West Coast and hang out with Larry, and that's how he introduced him to Brian.
Well, he was an aspiring, young, good-looking actor as well. So being in California, a hustler, but being in California, Hollywood was the place to be. So that really got him out there. And what, better arrangement than to have somebody from your childhood you went to school with who's there. It can kind of help you get in a few doors. And so that's how the relationship between Larry and this Diz Gillespie
and from Brian's lawyers, and I think Nat Weiss, I think it was.
Yes, Nat Weiss.
None of them really realized where he came from. They all say, well, he met him in London. Well, he didn't. He met him at the Beverly Hills Hotel in Los Angeles. And that relationship between Diz and Brian grew, as so did Larry grow. But because Brian had a persuasion for bad boys, for a darker side, could have done him in. And Larry was a nice guy, a good guy. So Larry lost points for that, basically, and the attention really focused on Diz. And that's how Brian got more actively involved with Diz, and that turned out to be a disastrous, cost him a lot of money and cost him a lot of pain. He was not a good person to Brian, and the funny thing,
up into his last days, that's Brian's last days. Yeah,
we have a lot of suspicious thoughts about Diz Gillespie, but the funny thing, if you might say, or strange thing, is that Diz Gillespie, from what we know, and in our opinion, is that our understanding is that he got busted in Los Angeles by the police. He was busted in New York by the police, and he was busted in England by the police. And yet we can't find any record of him. and we know his real name, his legitimate name, everything. There's no police record. How does that happen? And
Poor
so,
record keeping. They needed Robin on the case to make sure all of the records stayed exactly where they needed to be.
well, that might be true,
Right.
or it's intentional. And he could have been a witness on witness protection, because at the time, the FBI and MI5 had profiles on the Beatles because they were concerned about the Beatles causing a revolution
Well,
with the young
especially
children.
John and
With
John.
John Lennon, his sayings about Jesus Christ and what have you, and various different things. Our government was a little nervous about them, so there was open files on these people, and I think that, and I may be reaching, but I don't think we are having information from Diz Gillespie, who was an insider, could have made sense. And there was a couple other factors. When we talked about the Velvet Mafia, there were a couple of bad characters called the Cray twins, who were notorious gangsters. They did kill people. They were not good people, and they were big time promoters in England. In fact, when Frank Sinatra went to England, they provided the security for Frank Sinatra, which is interesting. They did forget which Cray, but Diz was a witness basically to a murder that he saw with one of the Cray twins. Now,
I think it was Reggie.
I think, well, yeah, Reggie. And that is interesting because, they would have no problem taking you out as a witness. I mean, the twins, because, people were scared to death of them. So if that was found out that he was a witness, I think that's where the protection could have come in, and why we don't know anything about Diz Gillespie.
Well, and the story circling around a member of parliament being involved in some pretty scandalous activity.
Lord Boothby.
So, add that to the mix as well. Diz Gillespie being in the same places at the same time. So
Lord Boothby was married but had another side of his life and had these wild parties. And Brian would go, and Diz Gillespie would go, and various, people of that group. And there was, in fact, in the United States during the last concert, Brian didn't go to the concert because Diz had stolen his briefcase, and inside his briefcase were acetates of the Beatles recording, and also some drugs and contracts, but also photographs, compromising photographs that were taken at various parties, including at Lord Boothby's parties. So that was really potentially could be disastrous. So he was out with his attorney chasing down Diz Gillespie, trying to find him and make a deal. And they did get, I think, the briefcase back.
it was two briefcases. The attorney's briefcase as well as Brian's briefcase were stolen. So
it's more than interesting. And we also think, and this is our opinion again, that we're not so sure if Brian died well, we know he died of drugs, of an overdose of drugs, but we're not sure if, I don't believe it was suicide. We don't believe it's suicide.
that's correct.
And there might be some foul play because Diz was still looming about. Diz is the only one that we knew, according to our research, that had keys to his flat and could have gone there the night that he came. He was supposed to meet Diz. Brian went on a holiday and was and Diz was supposed to join him, but he didn't show up. He's kind of like, the character in the Peanuts commercial, in the Peanuts cartoon, Lucy, who always puts the football down and then pulls it away. That's what Diz would do to Brian. He would always tempt him, and then he would say, I'm not coming. So he left Brian alone with a couple of friends out in the country, and Brian got upset and decided to drive back home. And that's how that happened. He left his friends in the country and came back home, and the house people were gone because they didn't think Brian was going to be around.
Yeah, they came back later, but
they came back late the night that he had passed away. But we're not so sure. Larry was on the phone with Brian, and that late night, and Larry swears he heard somebody else in the room that suddenly came in, and that's where. Could it have been? And we know that when Brian was found and people were on the phone and they were kicking down the door and what have you, my feelings are, and forgive us, but I think a lot of people wanted to protect Brian. And I think that whatever drugs were in the room were organized and
Right.
put in the little carrot. In other words, they cleaned up the crime scene. And by doing that, they might not have known it, but by doing that, I think they altered what could have been potentially a murder crime scene. Just by trying to do good for Brian, they sort of messed up the whole crime scene, and everyone just went, okay, suicide or
Right.
whatever, they just jumped to a
Accidental
conclusion.
overdose.
I think the same thing almost happened with Marilyn Monroe. So, but that's a whole other story.
So I want to rewind a second here. Robin, you brought up something neat about your book, the golden book on the logo, which I have here beside me, revised and expanded. So you said there was a hardback version and then this version here. Is there anything in the paperback version with the revised and expanded logo that you wanted to add but didn't get to add, or stuff that they said, hey, we can't put that in here?
There was nothing that was we were informed of couldn't be in there.
Mhm.
We didn't have the opportunity to read the proofs thoroughly. There were more photographs. There were some stories in there that we had additional information we wanted to expand upon as well, and the order, the order of the chapters
Mhm.
as well. So that really is the difference.
Okay. And
If we were
with the
ever
book,
to expand it, if we were ever had the opportunity that would arise to talk about making it into a movie, we have files a much more in depth in certain areas that could be offered.
Yeah, a few years worth, because it took us a few years
Yes.
to get this all together and finished.
it's interesting that you brought that up, Rick, because that's a question I have for you. Have you presented this to any producers or potential investors or directors to make this into a limited series or even a film?
The answer is no. And you asked me why. I don't have a real good answer for that. I just sort of let it ride and was hoping that maybe it would pick up its own momentum and it would be discovered. Maybe I should make those inquiring phone calls. I don't know, but it's because I think a story about two guys who are gay that had to hide their homosexuality with a backdrop of the Beatles could be most interesting for a story.
Well, it could be a play as well. I mean, there's
There's
a lot of
things it
a
could
few
be.
different directions it could go, and we both thought about how wonderful either of those would be. I suppose we were just sitting back waiting for somebody to approach us.
Yeah, I
And
guess so.
and it
And
didn't
also,
happen.
we're so
Up to
busy.
now, up
We're
to
so
now.
busy with other things and other clients that, we put this out, we got it published. Okay, next, we just sort of move to the next project.
I think that you definitely need to be reaching out to somebody for sure. I think this would make a great adaptation for a limited series or a movie, a biopic, whatever you want to call it.
Thank you.
I think that you guys have done a fabulous job with this book. And
Thank you.
hopefully, who's ever watching this gives you a call and says, hey, let's make this into a movie or show. And if not, you're going to have to make some phone calls.
It was really put together with a lot of love. I
Yes.
mean, it's great with the title, our relationship with Larry and what he had with Brian, and really, I mean, it was put together with a lot of love.
What do you hope readers take away from Hide Your Love Away?
Being open to what others have experienced with regards to their relationships, whether it be somebody that is very well known as Brian was. He had a good deal of money. He was very successful. And Larry coming from another side of the track. I mean, Larry wasn't bad, but he didn't have that type of exposure
The money or the
or
power.
connection, and money and power, and how it doesn't really make any difference what side you're on. If you find somebody that you have that connection with, where it becomes love, that can happen.
What Robin and I have, we're blessed. I really believe that, what do they say? It's not how you start the race, but it's how you finish it that counts. And I feel like we're finishing it wonderfully.
Yes, absolutely.
But when I look at Larry and the conversations that we had with Larry and the understanding that I have of Brian, and because he was tormented and had depression issues, those two and all the other homosexuals at the time had to struggle with the fact that they couldn't openly love. They couldn't share their love openly. I mean, imagine that. You can't hug somebody, you can't kiss somebody, you can't be open about it. I mean,
Walk down the street holding hands.
I feel so bad for them. What sort of probably kept us going, because I just think that that's so shameful, that the people had to alter their way of life at that time. To some degree, to today as well. It's as open as it is and accepted as it is. It's in some circles, it's not.
Now, with the two of you being titans that you are, did you find writing this book together a smooth collaboration, or were there moments where your creative visions might have clashed?
It went very smooth. We had a whole process, and I'd be doing research while Rick would be writing things that we researched and going back to Larry's notes and how to incorporate everything, and we'd switch.
Well,
and that's how the whole process
I've never been
worked.
right. So Robin's always right. So once I got that understood, it was clear sailing.
We may have had conversations about, no, let's word it this way, and he'll say, no, I think let's word it that way. But there was no, I mean, it all was a wonderful experience. We really, like I said, a lot of love went into this. We're very proud of the book, and it makes us happy to honor Larry.
Yes.
When we look at your book, what's your favorite moment? If you just did the thumb test, flipped through the book and said, geez, that's the moment that I loved talking about and sharing with the world the most, what moment would that be?
We try to share locations in Hollywood that some of them are no longer there. Some of them are. The Beverly Hills Hotel is still there. Where Larry lived with his roommates is still there. We have photographs of that house in the book. The Hollywood night spots, from Dresden's restaurants to the bistro, to all these different places. We like to bring it up because I think that it gives the reader an understanding of what Hollywood was all about at the time. Wallach's Music City, Capitol Records, all those are great landmarks at the time that we wanted to put in there. So I liked our travels. It's almost like a travel guide. I almost like being able to do that.
Well, and for anybody who in their life had gone to California, gone to Los Angeles and Hollywood as a tourist, it might bring something to their mind. Some of the streets that we mentioned, and the right turns and the left turns, and the restaurants that either Larry went to or they went to together.
Dino's.
Yes, so that would trigger something in the head of somebody who had visited before. That was quite fun to recreate.
Looking back on this project, Hide Your Love Away, an intimate story of Brian Epstein told through Larry Stanton, what was the most unexpected moment you came across that, Hide Your Love Away, we couldn't come out in the era that we were in, but when you were doing your research, even about Diz and all these other fascinating stories, and some that you have left out for reasons, what was the most unexpected moment for you two to be like, whoa, wait a minute here, what was that?
Was when we found his phone number in Brian's private phone book. That really told us a lot, because we had no idea of that. Larry didn't know about that. We brought that to Larry and showed it to him, a copy of it, of course. That sort of blew me away,
and it was very touching for Larry as well. That was
yeah.
Well, and then the other thing that, as we were progressing in the story, and probably the first edit, was first of all, how difficult it was for Larry, in that he didn't have the opportunity to go to England himself and to be in that environment with him, because of an unfortunate situation that came up with Larry at the time that he was invited. But had he gone there, how close he could have come to not ever making it back because of some of those people, the Cray twins, for example. I mean, he could have lost his life, and with Diz as well. I mean, there are a few things that made us really think back on the story.
But on the other side, if he would have went, maybe he could have changed Brian's mind, possibly, to have not gotten so wrapped up with Diz and those kind of characters. It's possible. We'll never know. We'll never know.
Now I have 3 fun rapid fire questions for you if you're ready for them.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
All right. Who's more likely to take the lead on a creative project?
Well, I'd say sometimes we both have that creative thinking. You know, we share it equally, I'd
Yeah,
say.
it really depends. I
Yeah,
mean,
it depends on,
I often Robin will say something just out of the blue, and it'll just sort of hang there, and then we'll come back to it and go, "Gee whiz, that's a good idea." So
but Rick will do the same. So I mean, that's what makes makes it fun.
Yeah, it's a toss up.
And who's the better negotiator?
It depends on what the situation is. How about that? Rick knows a lot of the contractual and relationships, in the entertainment world better than I do. But I have a really good business sense, so I can look at something different. So again, I think
She
it
can
really
be a lot
depends.
stronger than I can. She'll stop me from giving the show away, and so I think that's a really good
Yeah,
quality.
I'm kicking him under the table quite
Yeah.
often when we're having a conversation
Yeah,
with
that's true.
something.
I have the bruises to prove it. Yes.
And what would be your favorite go-to activity when you need to unwind after a hectic day?
Activity.
Besides a glass of wine.
Hey, if that's what it is, that works too.
Well, we love watching old movies.
Yeah, we're a big lover of classic movies, especially 40s, the 1940s, and film noir. We really like that a whole lot.
And we love the murder mystery type of movies and how movies have been made over time.
Well,
And we start analyzing things. Now, Rick is really good when it comes to light and the shadows. And so we're having a different kind of conversation than your average person may have when they're sitting watching a movie.
and just the dialogue that they had in the 40s. In the 40s, 30s, 40s, the movies had to be about something. And so you could really go down a road, and the Dashiell Hammett or whatever, the dialogue was kind of wonderful. Whereas later on with video effects and film effects, what have you, it's all become about an effect rather than about a story. It's something's blowing up, something's racing through the screen. And I just think we've lost so much in storytelling. So that's why we like to go look at the classics.
I will add,
Lot to learn
fashion
from.
was wonderful too.
Fashion's always nice. The period
Yeah.
pieces, right? Those are
That's
always
right.
cool too. And where can people learn more about you guys? Where can we learn more about Rick and Robin Bragg-Marcelli? Where can we get our copies of Hide Your Love Away?
Well, Hide Your Love Away you can get anywhere at Amazon or trinde.com.
Yes.
TRINE.
You go into your local bookstore, it can be ordered if
Yes.
they don't have it
Any
on the
bookstore,
shelf.
you can order it. Also, you can reach us at
MarcelliCompany.com.
yes. Think we can do it that way. And Trinde, TRINEDAY.com is our book publisher, and you can always order it from them. Again, like I said, Amazon. You can get it from Amazon.
Mhm.
And Robin and Rick, what's something that scares you?
Let's just say
Let's-
current times are a little bit scary.
And I have time for one last question for you today on Coffee with Chris, and I really appreciate you being here today. It's what makes Rick and Robin smile?
Well-
besides each other,
Well-
you got to have some laughter in
we,
life.
We love our clients, like Harvey Brownstone, he makes us smile and laugh, and he's a wonderful friend to have. So we enjoy him, as well as others, Dr. Lois Lee with Children of the Night. She's saving children that have been the world, saved 12,000 to date, and she's been doing this for 45 years. So we have a lot of love for our clients and that actually turn out to be family, that turn out to be friends, and that's a blessing.
Well, and then add to it family.
Oh,
Children, I've got children and they're having their own children. So
That's
being a
right.
grandparent, those joys are just,
And
incredible.
One's on the way right now.
Yes, as a matter of fact. Yeah. It's at the end of this month. And we've got our little dog.
Yeah.
We love our little dog. She makes us smile all the time.
And she tells us what to do. So
Congratulations on the new member to your family coming at the end of the month. That's amazing.
Thank you.
As I said, that was the last question I had for you today with Coffee with Chris. Everyone out there, make sure you get to the internet and check out Rick and Robin Bragg-Marcelli. Get your copy of Hide Your Love Away, an intimate love story from Brian Epstein. Larry Stanton is perfect right there. I'll be putting everything up on there as well. Remember, everyone, to smile to inspire and have yourselves a fantastic day. Thank you again so much, Rick and Robin. This has been absolutely amazing.
thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.